back at the 2016 NHL Entry Draft. The draft rankings heading into the event were pretty consistent. Most people had Auston Matthews as the number 1 overall pick. Now there was, albeit a controversy as to whether or not Patrik Laine could go number 1 because he was a really good goal scorer at the World Juniors, etc. But for the most part, everybody was like, yeah, it's going to be Matthews 1, Laine is probably going to go number 2, and for the most part, that's exactly what happened. However, if you go back to the mock drafts and you go back to all the projections, the 3rd overall pick was actually a bit contested. Because HockeyProspect.com, Future Considerations, ISS McKean's, and TSN and Bob McKenzie all had the same guy go 3rd overall in their mock drafts. That guy's name was not Pierre-Luc Dubois, who ended up going 3rd overall to the Columbus Blue Jackets at the 2016 NHL Entry Draft. The 3rd overall projected player was actually Jesse Puljujarvi. And if you're a hockey guy who's been a fan of the league for the past few years, you would have known that. Yeah, I know, Pierre-Luc Dubois was not projected to go 3rd overall, even though he did, and that shocked the hockey world when it happened. Well, I'm making this video here today because Pierre-Luc Dubois in the present is one of the top players on the Columbus Blue Jackets and one of the hottest players in the league in terms of his overall point production. If you take a look at what he's been able to do so far in the postseason for the 2020 NHL Return to Play format, Pierre-Luc Dubois is all the way up there at 6 points in his most recent 5 games played. 3 of those goals came in one game against the Toronto Maple Leafs. That was the big overtime comeback win. 4-3 in overtime. Crazy, crazy stuff. Yesterday, against the Tampa Bay Lightning, he had a goal and an assist in the unfortunate quintuple overtime loss. Crazy stuff again, but Pierre-Luc Dubois has been one of the hotter players throughout this entire return-to-play format, and it's no real surprise. The guy's an absolute workhorse who bleeds talent, skill, and mobility playing for the Columbus Blue Jackets, but I wanted to revisit the idea of the draft. Because all the way back in 2016, if you told anybody that Pierre-Luc Dubois was the right choice at 3rd overall, most people would call you crazy, unless the person you were talking to was named Jarmo Kekäläinen. This is all because Jesse Puljujarvi was seen as that consensus 3rd overall pick. And it's honestly kind of nuts, the hype that Jesse Puljujarvi had. And this has been documented in many videos, mine included, from different creators all over the web as well as analysts, but Puljujarvi was seen as the more NHL-ready of the two out of him and Laine, because while Laine was the lethal goal-scoring machine, Jesse Puljujarvi was seen as the two-way beast who could put up points while doing very, very good things on his own end of the ice too, and the World Junior cemented that as well, which is why people were so hyped for Jesse Puljujarvi. I cannot stress that this guy going 4th was incredibly shocking. Furthermore, the fact that Kekäläinen was a Finnish guy who probably had more eyes than others on the Finnish talents at the draft cemented even further the weirdness of picking Dubois over Puljujarvi. Now, in hindsight, we all know that that's kind of the right decision because Puljujarvi isn't even in the league. He's had a little bit of a fallout with the Edmonton Oilers. He has said that he probably could see a return sometime soon, but we won't know for sure. The bottom line is, though, Puljujarvi is a worse player than Dubois, and everybody can kind of look at that draft and say that the Blue Jackets made the right choice. But because this is a discussion-based YouTube channel, I came across this link on the Columbus Blue Jackets subreddit. It is a link to the Our Hockey thread of Pierre-Luc Dubois getting selected 3rd overall, and some of these reactions from hockey fans can kind of paint the entire picture as to how crazy it was that the Cape Breton Screaming Eagles guy went 3rd overall. The top comment over here from a Flames fan, his name is Saturated Penguin, he says, "How does Edmonton get away with this?" The Dairy Lord replies, "Even when they lose the lottery, they win." And they won because Puljujarvi was seen as such an elite potential talent, and he just dropped to 4th. to where Edmonton was picking on a team that already got the Nuge, Taylor Hall, Yakupov, McDavid the year prior. This is the entire reason we even changed the draft lottery format in general. It's because Connor McDavid went to Edmonton and the Oilers ended up with 4 first overall picks in the span of like 6 years. So the new format with 3 lotteries done for 1, 2, and 3 is all because of Edmonton. And Edmonton, who didn't end up winning a lottery, still got a player who many thought was a potential lottery pick in Jesse Puljujarvi because the Blue Jackets went with Dubois instead. The whole comment section here is just freaking out about Dubois going 3rd. Vasily Zaitsev says this, "F you and your draft projections," Columbus management says. But we actually have a reply that kind of sums up the entire story with just one sentence. It comes over here from Chocolate Cheese 1. He says this, "I'm convinced that Jarmo is actually an omniscient prophet, and we mortals simply cannot understand his judgment." And man, that kinda sums everything up, because it turns out Kekäläinen was absolutely correct in his judgment there. Scrolling down a little bit more though, here are some more comments highlighting the overall hype of Jesse Puljujarvi. Currywin says, "Oilers are getting a pool party." Then Not So Young Padawan says he is going to be Connor McDavid's Yari Curry. Boy, those are some big shoes to fill. I'm so excited. I can't believe this. You really can't believe a top draft pick is going to Edmonton? Now back in 2016, this was funny because, hey, this is still when Edmonton was getting 1st overall McDavid, 3rd overall Draisaitl, 1st overall Nugent Hopkins, 1st overall Yakupov, 1st overall Taylor Hall. You get the idea. But an even bigger discussion was made over here too. "Okay, I'm actually surprised by this one," Jean Lou Weezy says. But not Leonardo DiCaprio, who probably isn't Leonardo DiCaprio, says this, that the GM and amateur scout are Finnish. Puljujarvi was pretty much consistent number 3, even number 2 in some rankings. And the fact that the Blue Jackets probably would have had the option to trade down if they wanted Dubois instead of Puljujarvi. Get some free assets plus the guy you want. Now, at the same time, I do understand why this would have been a concern, but the only real reason a team wouldn't want to trade down is if they feel that the teams underneath them wanted their guy. Now, would it have been worth it to trade from 3rd overall to 4th overall and make it seem to the Oilers, "Oh, we want Puljujarvi, so if you want Puljujarvi instead, hey, give us some stuff over here. We'll just take Dubois instead at 4th overall if you want Puljujarvi that badly." And of course, we wouldn't know if that's actually the conversation that would have gone down if they even entertained the idea of trying to trade the pick. But if they wanted to trade it down even further beyond 4th, it would have posed a much greater risk. Mostly because Pierre-Luc Dubois was projected to go 4th overall, if you take a look at his own draft rankings. All these scouting outlets over here had him at 4, some had him at 5, McKeen's actually had him at 8. But there was a toss-up between him and Tkachuk. Some people had Juolevi in there as to who could go number 4 or 5. But the Vancouver Canucks actually were in this conversation too, because back when the Vancouver Canucks had the 5th overall pick, which they used to select Juolevi, if Pierre-Luc Dubois was available at number 5, they would have traded that pick to Montreal in exchange for PK Subban. That's a topic we've already covered on this channel. It's heavily documented over here. And whether or not that would have been known to Jarmo Kekäläinen is up for debate, but the fact is, that whole scenario with Vancouver and Subban and their pick would have been a big obstacle if they wanted to trade down. But even so, with all this trade stuff, trading down the pick and still taking your guy, with all this conversation in hindsight, we all know that Pierre-Luc Dubois was probably the right decision. You could debate whether or not Tkachuk would have been a right decision too, but hey, they're still valuable players and they're still very, very good. Here's a comment over here that kind of sums up the entire idea from Chronic658. To everybody talking smack about this, in 2013, Barkov was predicted to go 4th and went 2nd. Everyone at the time thought it was a terrible pick, but 3 years later, Barkov is arguably the best player from his draft class. There's no way to tell who won the draft until years later from now. And that's kind of where we stand here on this one. Pierre-Luc Dubois was the better pick out of the two, but at the time, it really, really wasn't all apparent that it was. Now with Pierre-Luc Dubois' incredible dominance at the 2020 NHL Return to Play format, I think now is a great time to acknowledge just how wrong some people were about this decision 4 years ago. So talk to me in the comments what you thought about the draft pick when it was made, what you think about the draft pick now, and furthermore, what you thought about the people's overreaction to this pick. I'm looking forward to reading your comments. I hope you enjoyed this video. So that's Troll99, and bye.